What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
I wish I could tell you the exact moment everything went wrong. But the truth is, the apocalypse didn't arrive with a bang. It crept in like a fever. I was working the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital when patient zero came through our doors. Just another Tuesday night in the ER, or so I thought. The guy was burning up, 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit, muttering about a bite he got while hiking in the Appalachians. My colleague Sarah took one look at the festering wound in his shoulder and ordered broad-spectrum antibiotics. That should have been the end of it. But 3 hours later, the man's heart stopped. Nothing unusual there. We do lose patients sometimes. Sarah called time of death at 3:47 a.m., and we moved him to the morgue. I remember thinking how strange it was that his body was still so warm. I went to grab coffee from the break room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting that sickly pale glow that makes everyone look half dead anyway. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Claire. "Turn on the news. Something weird is happening in Atlanta." Before I could check, the code blue alarm blared through the speakers. Location, the morgue. Here's the thing about working in a hospital. You develop a sixth sense for when something isn't right. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I sprinted down the basement level. The morgue doors were already open, and I could hear Sarah screaming. The sight that greeted me will haunt me until the day I die. Our dead patient had the morgue attendant pinned against the wall, teeth buried deep in the poor guy's neck. But it wasn't the blood that made me freeze. It was the patient's eyes. They were completely white, like pearls rolled back in his skull. Sarah was trying to pull him off, but he was impossibly strong. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it as hard as I could at his head. He dropped like a stone, but the damage was already done. The morgue attendant, Bill, I think his name was, slid to the floor, blood pumping from his neck. "We need to call security," Sarah panted, pressing her hands against Bill's wound. "And the police. And the CDC. This isn't normal." I nodded, already pulling out my phone. That's when Bill started convulsing. The next few minutes are a blur in my memory. I remember Sarah trying to help Bill while I dragged her away. I remember the inhuman sounds he started making as his temperature skyrocketed. I remember slamming the morgue door shut just as both of our dead patients got to their feet. We managed to lock them in, but we could hear them throwing themselves against the door, over and over, like rabid animals. Sarah was hyperventilating beside me, her scrubs covered in blood. "Jake," she whispered, using my name for the first time that night. "What the hell is happening?" I didn't answer. My phone was lighting up with the notifications. Similar incidents were happening all over the city, all over the country. The dead weren't staying dead, and they were hungry. That was 6 hours ago. Now I'm barricaded in the hospital pharmacy with Sarah and 3 other survivors. The power has been cutting in and out. The screams from the upper floors have mostly stopped. That's not a good thing. My phone's at 20%, but I needed to write this down, to warn anyone who might be reading. If someone you love gets bitten, don't wait and don't hope. Don't try to help them. Just run. Because when they turn, and they will turn, they won't be your loved ones anymore. I have to go now. Sarah says she's not feeling well. Says she's burning up. Says the scratch she got from Bill in the morgue is starting to itch. God help us all. It's been 18 hours since my last update. Sarah is dead. I had to make sure she didn't come back. I keep replaying it in my mind. The way her fever spiked so fast. How her eyes grew glassy and distant. The moment she looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "Do it." She knew it was coming. She'd seen it happen to Bill. I won't describe what came next. I owe her that much dignity. The 3 others who were with us, Dr. Chen, a nurse named Marcus, and a terrified patient named Rebecca, they helped me afterward. We wrapped Sarah's body in sheets and locked it in a supply closet. No one mentioned how we could hear scratching from the morgue 2 floors below, where it all started. No one needed to. The hospital's generator kicked in around dawn, giving us access to the security cameras. What we saw... Christ. The infection spread through the hospital like wildfire. Most of the staff and patients who couldn't escape in time are now wandering the halls. They move in this horrible, jerky way, like marionettes with half their strings cut. But here's the really fucked up part. They're learning. At first, they were just shambling around, attacking anything that moved. Now they're showing signs of, coordination. 2 hours ago, we watched a group of them work together to corner a survivor on the pediatric floor. They herded him, like wolves. These things aren't just mindless animals. I think they're evolving. Dr. Chen thinks it has something to do with the hive mind theory, that they're somehow connected, sharing information. He's been taking notes, trying to document everything. Says if we survive, the information might be valuable. I honestly just think he's losing it. The good news, if you can call it that, is that we're relatively safe in the pharmacy. The security shutters are reinforced, and we have access to medical supplies. The bad news is that we're running out of food, and the water pressure is getting weak. Marcus suggested we try to reach the cafeteria on the first floor. It's a suicide mission. We've seen at least 30 infected between here and there on the cameras, but we might not have a choice soon. Rebecca hasn't spoken since she watched her husband turn in the ER waiting room. She just sits in the corner, methodically organizing pills into rainbow-colored lines. Sometimes she hums lullabies. An hour ago, we lost the camera feed to the upper floors. The generator must be running low on fuel. Before the screens went dark, we saw something that chills me to my core. The infected were gathering in the main lobby, dozens of them. But they weren't wandering aimlessly anymore. They were waiting, watching the main entrance. That's when we realized they're not trying to get out. They're waiting for people to come in. The National Guard, emergency services, worried family members, anyone coming to help will be walking into a trap. I tried calling 911 again, but the lines are still jammed. Cell service is spotty at best. The internet comes and goes. From what little information we can piece together from the news alerts, it's not just our hospital. The infection has spread to every major city on the East Coast. The last update I saw mentioned military quarantine zones being established, but that was hours ago. Wait, something's wrong. The emergency lights just switched off. I can hear movement in the ventilation system above us. Dr. Chen is shining his phone light up at the ceiling tiles. They're vibrating. Oh God. They've been in the vents this whole time. Marcus is screaming at everyone to grab what we can carry. Rebecca has finally snapped out of her daze and is shoving bottles of antibiotics into her pockets. The ceiling tile is just cracked. I have to go. If you're reading this, stay away from hospitals. Stay away from cities. And whatever you do, don't trust what you think you know about the infected. They're not brain dead. They're not mindless. They're... I don't know who will find this. My phone's almost dead, and I'm hiding in a maintenance tunnel beneath the hospital. I can hear them moving above me, searching. I need to finish telling this story. People need to know the truth. When the ceiling collapsed in the pharmacy, it wasn't just one of 2 infected that dropped down. It was like a flood. Dr. Chen was the first to go. He just froze. Started mumbling equations and infection rates until they grabbed him. Rebecca managed to squeeze through the partial open security gate. Marcus and I followed, but he tripped. I can still hear his screams when I close my eyes. I ran. God help me, I ran. But here's the thing. Running through those halls, watching the infected chase me, I finally understood what makes them different from zombies in movies and games. They're not rotting. They're not falling apart. They're improving. The first ones we saw, like Patient Zero, were clumsy and aggressive. But the newer ones? They're faster, stronger. The virus isn't killing the host. It's optimizing it, rewiring it, creating something better. I found that out the hard way when I ran into what used to be Sarah. She was standing at the edge of the corridor, perfectly still. When she saw me, she smiled. Actually fucking smiled. Then she spoke. "Jake," she said, her voice a horrific parody of her old self. "We've been waiting for you. Don't you want to evolve?" I ran the other way, but they were hurting me. Every route I took led me deeper into the hospital. Eventually, I found the entrance to the maintenance tunnels behind a broken vending machine. They haven't found me yet, but they're getting closer. My phone's been picking up emergency broadcasts. The military is planning to sanitize the infected zones at dawn. That's government speak for burn it all down. They know what I know now. This isn't a disease that can be cured. It's an evolution that can't be stopped. The infected aren't trying to eat us. They're trying to change us. Each generation of the virus is more sophisticated than the last. Those coordinated attacks we saw, that was just the beginning. They're building a network, a hive mind, and it's growing smarter by the hour. I can hear helicopters in the distance. The evacuation must be starting. Or maybe it's something worse. But I need to tell you the most terrifying part. Something I saw on my way down here. Something that explains why this is spreading so fast. Why quarantine won't work. The infected. They can play dead. I saw a group of them lying motionless as a rescue team entered the building. Perfect stillness until the moment was right. And they just got up. Think about it. How many bodies are in morgues right now? In funeral homes? How many people were declared dead in the early hours of this thing, only to turn later? They're not turning at all. They're waiting. We're not at the start of this apocalypse. We're somewhere in the middle. But my phone's at 2%. The tunnels branch off ahead of me. I can hear water running somewhere, maybe a way out through the storm drains. But I can also hear something moving down here with me. Something that's breathing too regularly to be human anymore. If you're reading, remember this. They can play dead. They're getting smarter. They can work together. They can speak. And most importantly, if you think you're safe, you're already ksh. Additional update. Posted from unknown location. 12 hours later. We are evolving. We are improving. We are waiting. Don't be afraid. Join us. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that story. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.